All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. And thank you for signing in this morning to attend part two of my buyer's education series. Today's topic, so I'm ready to put in an offer, what's next? So today I am joined with a guest speaker, but really quickly, I'll go ahead and introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. I'm Prina Khan, Sunah Ventures Real Estate, and I am an agent, but an education specialist first and foremost. The way I work with my clients is unique in that I really take the time out to knowledge share, understand what the client's specific requirements, circumstances are, and then like to explain things based on what's happening in the market, which changes day to day, but also making those connections to other experts, whether it be in the vein of mortgage, lender or an attorney or inspector, etc. And so this series, like I said, it's 5 parts, is really exploring that journey as a buyer. And it's not, just, oh, I found a house, great, let's sign the contract. There are so many more components to that. And in this market that we're living in right now, which is a very hyped seller's market, there's a lot of nuances in addition to the usual process that we'll be covering. So today I'm joined by my co-host, John Johnson. And John, I'll turn it over to you if you want to do a brief intro.
Thanks, Brina. So again, my name is John Johnson. I am the team lead for the Johnson Signature Group at Exit Platinum Realty. And similar to Prina, it's all about education. So we're big on the before, during, and after. So before is about how we can prepare you to be ready, willing, and able to purchase a home. During is actually, the whole process of buying a home and getting you in the home. And then after, once you're in the home, how we're going to educate you to keep you in your home. So, Prina, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned, here's our contact information. If you have any questions to follow up. Now, I know a number of you may be also working with other agents within our team, and you may have heard me say this if you've worked with John in the past, if you've worked with one of our other agents. A big part of working with us is that you have access to the entire team. And so if one of your agents has referred you to this session, that's why we truly work as a team. So there may be times that we do cross showings together. We all have our niches in terms of our expertise that we lean on each other. And so it's not uncommon to get more or a whole entourage of agents than just the one that you're working with. So today's agenda, we're going to cover, like I said, making an offer, what that means, the valuation review deep dive. That's probably the chunk that we're going to really dig into in terms of time. We'll revisit the buyer's checklist, talk about leveraging agent expertise, and what it means for a buyer to put their best foot forward when it comes to an offer. So just a quick snapshot. With everything, I guess, in the last 18 months in COVID, we've seen an unprecedented shift in terms of behavior, market behavior. And based on an article from NJ.com, it's noted that the average price of a home in New Jersey is on average $100,000 more than it was pre-COVID or from a year ago. And not because houses are now coming with elevators or tricked out, security systems. It's, if anything, it's the opposite. You'll notice a lot of the homes are being listed as is. 99% of homes are listed as is. It is truly a seller's market. And what that means is, typically we want to see a balance. We want to see, a decent number of houses on market and available, a decent amount of houses being sold, and options for buyers and sellers alike. But when you have a situation where, let's say it's a buyer's market, that means you have more supply than demand. And so sellers are rushing to sell their homes and might be a little more flexible in terms of contingencies, in terms of negotiations, right? They want to put their best foot forward in order to attract a buyer to purchase their home. We're not living in those days. We're living in a highly seller's market. So what that means is limited supply and massive demand. And behind that massive demand are these massive cash budgets. But it's not to intimidate anyone. For the average buyer that I work with, it's median, working class families that may not necessarily have tons of, liquid cash on hand. That's okay. We can still navigate this market, but it'll be critical that you follow a lot of the steps and guides that we talk about. So one of those things is the valuation report. Whenever, you're working with John and I and someone on our team, we will provide that report. We really want you to dig into it because that's going to be your guide. And even with that in this market, it could change week over week. So that's going to be important. The other thing, is most of the buyers at the point where you're working with myself or John or someone from our team, you have a mortgage banker or a loan officer, someone that you're working with because you have a pre-approval, right? In this market, it is required to have a pre-approval 90% of the time before a seller's agent will even allow you to come see the home. They want to know that you have that pre-approval on hand so that it won't further delay the process. So whether you're going through an FHA, or a VA or a conventional loan, you definitely want to start crunching those numbers right away and find out, in terms of putting that best foot forward, what that can mean for you. And when we talk about best foot forward, we're talking about in this highly, condensed seller's market where there's limited supply. Typically the asking price is not what the house will sell for. So you want to start thinking about, if this is the house you want, how much can I afford outside of that percentage down, outside of those closing costs? What additional monies? And that number on top of the selling price is what we mean by best foot forward. And again, you're going to use the expertise from your agent, your team, you're going to use the valuation report. But ultimately, you want to be able to place an offer that's aligned with your intention. If you saw that house and you don't want to not have it, then you have to think about that and do your own homework and really come up with that number that's going to make sense. And one trick that I've learned, even before I became an agent, is when you're trying to figure out those numbers on the fly, always think every $10,000 that I add on to my mortgage is roughly $50. So if you have a mortgage, and I'm making up numbers here, so don't hold me to it. If you have a mortgage for $300,000 and that comes out to $2,000 a month for your mortgage price, and you say, well, what if I went up to $320,000? You can kind of estimate that for that $20,000 more, that's about $100. So for every $10K over, think about it as $50. So that's another little trick that I wanted to share. So again, we talked about the mortgage types, whether it's an FHA or a conventional or I'm sorry, is there a question? No. Or VA, you are going to want to consider what that percentage down plus closing costs. Do not forget about that. I don't want you to start looking for, that best foot forward number and forget that there are closing costs in between there. So definitely keep that in mind. So we're going to jump into the valuation review, and I'm going to hand it over to John to talk us through. In this scenario, we chose a house that's, median range, kind of middle class, working class neighborhood. It's located in Linden. The asking price was $425,000. We pulled 3 comparables within a 3-mile radius to get a sense of, what the market looks like. And so we always want to look at homes that are a culmination of sold, maybe pending, and for sale. In this particular example, the house is flying off the shelf so quickly that we didn't have too many options for pending. So in this case, they're all closed, but I'll turn it over to John to kind of walk us through this valuation and some key points.
Sure. Thanks, Prina. So the purpose of the valuation is to see, well, with this crazy market, and I must say, in my 20 years of doing this, I've never seen a seller's market as aggressive as it is now. And we're to the point where the asking price or the list price that you may see on Zillow or Realtor.com, that's now considered the starting point. if you're not coming in at the asking price, you pretty much have no chance. And it's probably a 95% guarantee that you're up against at least 3 other buyers that are going after the same home. So the valuation review kind of gives you a sense of, well, how much over the asking price do we feel comfortable offering for this particular property? And I'm using the term we because it's not just you, the buyer, that's in it, it's your whole team. So it's myself or Prina or your realtor, your lender. Everybody is trying to work together to figure out, okay, how much over do we feel comfortable offering for this property? Because at the end of the day, these homes are appraising, as Prina mentioned, they're appraising for a lot more than what we're listing these homes for, on average $100,000 as compared to last year. So the valuation review will give you a sense of, okay, well, in this crazy market, how much can we offer over the asking price and still feel confident that the property will still appraise? Okay. And just to give you a background, when you go through the process of purchasing a home, a lender, when you're taking out a mortgage, a lender is going to send out an appraiser. And that appraiser is someone that evaluates a property that you're going to purchase with the lender's money to make sure that property is worth the amount that the bank is going to lend you. So obviously, the bank is not going to lend you, an exorbitant amount of money for a property that they feel is not worth it. At the end of the day, then they're upside down. Okay. So in this market, lenders, appraisers, they're all scratching their heads because they can't believe how fast homes are selling and how much more over asking that they're selling for. So a realtor such as Prina and or myself will provide you with a valuation review to give you some comfort in regards to how much a property can sell above its asking price. So what we use are comparables or comps. And comps are just simply snapshots of other homes within the same area that are very similar to the property that you're looking to purchase. And what we're looking at is we're looking at square footage, we're looking at number of bathrooms, bedrooms, style of home, whether it's a colonial, a ranch, a bi-level, or a split level. And most importantly, we're trying to find out how much did it sell for and when did it sell. So once we get all that information together, we pretty much sit back and we assess, okay, like for like, we'll do adjustments. Let's say a property has maybe 2 bedrooms, you're looking at a 3-bedroom. We'll do some adjustments because 9 times out of 10, the square footage is around the same. So we're trying to put ourselves in the lender's seat, if you will. We're trying to think like an appraiser. And by using a valuation review, we're coming very, very close to what that appraised value of that property would be in this kind of market. Okay. So when we go into the valuation workbook, you'll see this is where we're breaking down the actual home value and how much they sold for. So as you can see, we'll have the proximity to the home. In this case, the home we're looking at is 1506 Bower Street in Linden. And we're going to compare it to similar properties. So we're looking at 905 Walnut Street, 221 First Avenue. And we're basically breaking down those characteristics and features of the home. So how close is this home to this property? How much does it sell for? And also, how much is it per square foot? Now, a lot of people don't really pay attention to the per square foot value, but that comes in handy when you're comparing, let's say, a home that has not been remodeled or renovated within the past 10 years versus a home that has been fully renovated. And I'm sure some of you have come across homes that are fully renovated, which we would classify as flip homes, where people buy them that are distressed, they fix them up, and then they so-called, quote unquote, flip them. Okay, so Prina, you want to talk a little bit about the home buying process?
Yep, sorry about that. I was on mute. So yeah, and I just wanted to, again, just to drive this home on the valuation report. And I'm actually gonna go back a slide or two. So I really want to drive this home with everyone here, because not only are we pulling this information, we're taking the time out, as John mentioned, we're kind of putting ourselves in the appraiser or the lender's seat, to try to take a step back and look at this holistically, right? And usually when I present, or someone from our team presents these valuations, I like to call out what the comparables were listed as versus what they were sold for, right? So in this example that we just discussed, you know, the home in question is listed at 425. The initial comp at 905 Walnut was listed at 430, but sold for 460. The second comp was listed at 420, but sold for 450. And then the third comp was listed at 360, but sold for 16,000 over. So those are also call outs. And let me just mention, we'll only know this if it's closed. If it's a pending sale or also on the market is active, obviously we don't know what that number over will be from asking. But this trend is similar. So, you know, it all goes to whether or not that over amount is in line with the comps, and if that amount is in the buyer's comfort zone. So if, in this case, if I were buying a home and my agent presented this with me, I might say, okay, well, it's 425. It looks like on average, the sold price is about 25K. Am I comfortable with coming out of my pocket an additional 25,000, right? Because then if I'm gonna go in at 450, my you know, the asking is 425. Let's say it does approve for it appraises for 425. That means my mortgage will be at 425, and that's the check that the bank is going to give me after my 3.5% if it's FHA. But then that 25 over that I bid for also has to come out of my pocket. So again, it would be, you know, the 425 minus the 3.5% down, plus closing costs, plus that additional 25,000. And that is putting my best foot forward. If I say I need that house, that is the home that I can see my kids playing in the backyard, that is the home that I'm going to grow old with my spouse, then my best foot forward needs to be as close to 450 as possible. And I hope that makes sense. I just really don't want to be a dead horse, but definitely wanted to drive that point home. So going back to the process, you guys have been with me, have seen this chart before. Where we are right now is basically step 5, making an offer to purchase, and moving into step 6, which is doing your due diligence. So that's going to be before the closing and after in terms of doing your due diligence. But when you get to that point with your agent, you have that number, you're ready to move forward, best foot forward in terms of offer. Your agent's going to send over that contract. It's going to be signed. And then you just wait to hear back if your offer was accepted. But in the meantime, what you need to do immediately is make sure you have an attorney on hand. And at this point, your agent, whether it's myself or someone from our team or in John's team, will be able to provide you with references. I also highly recommend that you have an inspector on hand. Now, we've heard about contingencies being waived where, you know, a buyer comes in, they don't have an FHA, they have a conventional, and they're willing to waive, you know, any appraisal or any inspection issues. Keep in mind, with an FHA, the appraisal process versus a conventional is a little bit different. We'll talk about that in a second. But either way, my recommendation is to always have your own inspection. Even if you're saying, listen, again, 1506 Bower is my home. I see myself there. I see myself growing old there, but you still want to know what you're getting into. Do you need to start budgeting immediately because you're going to need to make some updates to the heating system? Or do you need to start saving because in the next 3 years, you're probably going to have to replace the roof? I highly recommend you spend the $500 on average bucks for an inspector to come out and tell you what the condition of the home is. Again, a seasoned agent is going to be able to look at things during the walkthrough when they go through the showing with you, but you want the expert, the inspector, to come in. So even if you are in the position where you have a conventional and you can be a little more flexible and not too concerned with the appraisal or the inspection, it doesn't hurt to know what you're getting yourself into. So don't hold back that $500 fee, because in the grand scheme of things, 500 is really not that much. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about, just to spend a little bit of time, and then we'll go into some questions and answers. But a lot of folks that I'm working with now are interested in either short sales or kind of waiting out the market until more foreclosures hit. And, you know, John has come with over 20 years experience. I think with the whole team, we're probably looking at 50 years if you combine everyone's experience. But, you know, John has spent some time working on short sales and foreclosures, as well as some of the other team leads. And so if you guys do have questions on that, definitely feel free to chime in. What I will say with that is, keep in mind, when you're going after a foreclosed or distressed property, right? If it's foreclosed, chances are there's going to be an auction if it's already been foreclosed upon, and chances are you'll need cash. So I think the terminology most of my buyers are really looking at is short sales or distressed properties. You're trying to get in front of those sellers that are in a bad situation. You know, maybe someone lost a job, or, you know, life happened, they can't afford the home. They're trying to find the best path out without doing a foreclosure, and that's where the short sale or distressed property comes in. But keep in mind, if you're waiting for that, that's great. There could be major opportunities in that. But we're talking about folks that are distressed, right? They're not going to leave their home with an apple pie on the counter and, you know, clean carpet and a welcome home blinky. They are being forced out of their home. So chances are you're going to have to, right off the bat, go in and put work into that home. So you may be getting it for a discounted price, but you're going to have to put work into it. If it does need work, there might be certain aspects during their appraisal that don't get checked off, which means in this market, it's being sold as is and as a short sale as is. These are things that before that FHA loan, the ink will be, you know, dry and signed, it has to be addressed by the buyer. So keep those things in mind when you are shifting to a short sale distressed property. It's going to come highly as is. I mean, I've seen pictures of, you know, and I don't know the reason, but homeowners just distressed. There's no other way to explain it. And they rip out the stove or they rip out the refrigerator and it's in the backyard, things like that. We don't know what the circumstances are for these people. And it's not necessarily on their own accord. They're being forced. So with that, there may be additional dollar amounts that are associated with making that home livable. And again, if you're on an FHA versus a conventional, where the appraisal is a little more in depth, then there may be things that have to be fixed before that bank gives you that check. So keep that in mind. And on top of all of that, every month that we're waiting, there's a chance that the banks are going to wake up and say, okay, now's a good time to revisit the rates. And we don't know which day these rates are going to go up. And to give an example, and don't check my math, but for a home today that's 500,000 at a 2.6%, let's say the mortgage is 3,400, right? Fast forward a year from now, rates are closer to 4%. A $400,000 house will most likely be more than 3,400 in terms of a mortgage. So keep all those things in mind. There's so many variables, right? But even though a house may be more expensive today, you can afford more house, even though the prices are higher than what we've seen historically. But with the interest rates still hovering around 3%, in some cases for a lot of people, even lower than that, you can afford that house. But that same sticker price a year from now at 4% may be well out of your budget. And you're going to say to yourself, well, I don't understand. The housing market is leveled back out now, right? We should be able to go in, yeah, but we're now back at normal rates. Because 2.6, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, we hadn't seen that in a very long time. That's also unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, we were at a 50-year low in regards to these interest rates because of the pandemic. As I mentioned earlier, I've never seen a market like this. And just to reiterate what Prina was saying, there are no discounts in real estate. You're going to pay for it one way or the other, whether you get a house through a bidding war and you're paying way over asking, or you buy a distressed property and now you have to put $100,000 in it to get it where you want it to be. There's always a price to pay. There are checks and balances when it comes to the economy, and there are definitely checks and balances when it comes to real estate. And that check and balance is the interest rate. As Prina just mentioned, it's a sliding scale based on how the market is. Seller's market, rates tend to be a little lower because not a lot of buyers are able to buy a lot of homes. But when it's a buyer's market and buyers are able to buy a lot of homes, then the Fed says, well, you know what? People are out there buying homes, so we're going to slightly move that rate up. And that little increase can cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in the difference of that monthly mortgage payment, as Prina just mentioned.
That's right. So I don't know, we have a couple folks on, and I wanted to leave some time because I know we're coming up to the half-hour mark. If anyone has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. And we'll give it a minute or so.
Hi, my name is Chauncey Bennett. I am a serious buyer. I'm in the process of trying to find our first home. This has been a nightmare for us. What does the buyer do with like the medium budget? Like, I'm working with little to nothing. I want a house. We can afford to do it, but it's like nothing out there. There's like, to find a house in this area for like 350,000. It's like, what are we doing? There's nothing.
Right.
Is it time for me to wait? I mean, I know the interest rates are low right now, which is great for me, but I'm literally fighting tooth and nail for every house I put an offer on.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Prina.
Now, I was just going to say first, thank you, Chauncey, for the question, for speaking up. And I feel you. I definitely feel you. It's frustrating. But don't feel like your budget is nothing. It's definitely something. And one strategy that I like to use with my buyers, and I'll give John a second to speak on this as well, but if, let's say your approval is for 350, what I like to do is make sure I keep the search within 25 to 50 under that, to give you that wiggle room. Now, in this market, it is limited in terms of what we may find available in North Jersey for 300,000. That's true. My recommendation is, I don't know if you've joined any of my earlier webinars, but I always talk about the requirements list versus the nice to haves list. And it's okay to have both. In this market, I'm going to need you to take that nice to have and just file it away for the next house and focus on requirements. I would like to have a 3-bedroom, but do you need a 3-bedroom? Maybe you need a 2. I would like to have 2 bathrooms. Maybe you need 2 bathrooms, but if, not to age myself, but if you grew up around the time I did, we had 1 bathroom. You can live with that, right? Because Chauncey, the thing is, you want to get your foot in the door and get that first property and let that equity start working for you. And that is the long-term idea of having wealth, right? Because in 3 years, hell, I've seen people after a year decide, you know what, I just bought this house, but I got some equity, I'm ready to upgrade. But if you don't start somewhere, you won't be able to upgrade from nothing. So we want to get you into something. So just make sure that you're keeping yourself honest, or maybe push your agent to do so. If you can revisit that list and maybe make a few adjustments in terms of what your requirements are. Maybe it's the square footage. Maybe it's, well, I really wanted parking, or I wanted a garage, or I wanted a finished basement. Look at that list and say to yourself, you know what can I live with right now to get that equity started and to be able to build my wealth so that I can upgrade or buy the next property? And also try to keep the search a certain amount below what your max price is, so that if you do need to go over, you have some wiggle room. And John, I'll turn it over to you.
I mean, Prina, you took all the words out of my mouth. All I will add are, what we must have, like Prina mentioned, and what are the nice to haves, and mainly the owner's bedroom, right? So how much time do we really spend in our bedrooms awake? So is that large, bedroom really a must have? We talk about, well, I need a bonus room. because we're working from home now. Well, can we leverage the space in our bedroom that we don't necessarily occupy during the day as that place to work out of by setting up our desk in maybe a corner of that bedroom and utilizing it? When we think about garages, are we really going to park our car in that garage? Or can we settle for a storage shed that goes in the backyard?
Mhm.
And in essence, it'll give your backyard that much more space. Buying a house with a one-car garage that you're not necessarily going to park in, you're just going to put a grill, and a couple of lawn chairs in, is that really a necessity? So unfortunately, Chauncey, in this market, you kind of have to reevaluate what you really, really must have, and how can we kind of leverage the existing space and amenities of these homes now. It's brutal. It's brutal, Chauncey, and I'm in the trenches with Chauncey, so I know what she's going through, and it's not just Chauncey. Unfortunately, it's probably everybody on this call that's going through the same exact thing. But as Brina mentioned, hang in there, and have meetings with your realtor, reassess the situation, bring in, all of the attributes of this market versus what you're willing to settle for, so to speak.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think we can probably squeeze in one more question, even though I know we're at time, but did anyone else have any questions or specifically on the short sales at all?
I have a question. Hi, how you doing?
Hi there. Is that Meta?
Yes, my name is Misa Walker. I'm in the
Misa.
process of trying to purchase a house. And what I was saying to my realtor, like sometimes when you're a first home buyer, they give you a certain grant, especially because I live in Newark. So sometimes Newark and Irvington, they give you like a first time buyers. But because like you said, the COVID and everything going on, people got grants. They gave them $10,000 and $20,000 to fix up their house. That a lot of people's not moving out of their houses. They're staying in and they're fixing up their property. So it's kind of hard to find it. So when you do find properties, the areas are so bad where you don't want to invest your money of buying a house, and the area is so bad where you could come out your house and you're going to get shot. So it's an up and down situation. Yes, I'm trying to buy a house because I'd rather pay for a house than constantly paying $1,600, $1,500 for an apartment where I live at. But like I told the realtor, you don't want to get a house where you're going to pay $2,000 or $2,300 for your mortgage when you know that you cannot afford it. So why go into that and get into a house where I have to pay $23,000, $2,300 for a mortgage when I know I can't afford it and I'm gonna wind up losing the house? So I'm like kind of stuck because when you're looking, it's in a bad neighborhood. When you trying to get something, it's over the amount of the approval. So I'm like, we stuck right now. We just don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely in line with what I'm hearing from a lot of buyers. Are you living in a house now, Mita?
I live in a 3-family house right now.
Okay.
I live in an apartment.
Okay.
I was trying to do try to buy a 2-family or 3-family so I could rent out. But me trying to, sometimes you're not ready to be a landlord.
That's right.
I go through so much now with my landlord. I don't want to be a landlord right now.
Yeah. I mean, the strategy here is it's great that you're kind of flexible. What I would say if I were the agent working with Prina, the buyer right now, I would say, Prina, you're living in an apartment today. Again, going back to, building that wealth, because especially in our community, the community, people of color, and there's different lines of what people of color are, where they come from. But the bottom line is this: we are still behind in terms of home ownership and wealth. So what I might say to Prina, the buyer, is, girl, you're living in an apartment now. Forget about a house. Look for a condo. Get your feet wet in terms of having some type of ownership. And so maybe a condo would allow me to scale my budget back by $50,000 to $75,000. It's less responsibility. It might be more affordable, and it might allow me to move out into an area that's a little bit safer. And what I also say to Prina, the buyer, is of course you want a house. It doesn't mean you're not going to have one. It just means it's a stopover. It's a layover on your flight to Dubai. It's a layover on your trip to Paris, because you'll just, you'll have that property, and who knows, maybe you'll fall in love with it and say, I'm comfortable here. But the second you move into that condo, from day one, you are building equity. And so 3 to 5 years from that point, you may have the equity, you may have a savings, a combination of the two, where you can now step out and say, okay, I have the funds to back up that 2-family. I'm not going to be house poor. So, maybe have that conversation with your realtor. The other thing, I also want to make it known, have your mortgage people working for you too. This is not just a situation where you call them up, they're like, yeah, here's your pre-approval, take it and go. No, they need to advise you if they have programs available. I've also noticed that a lot of banks are not forthcoming with people of color in terms of programs. I had one contact at a very well-known local bank. They're giving away $5,000. I'll just share it here. M&T Bank, depending on the location, they're giving away $5,000 in most counties in the state of New Jersey. And I believe it's Passaic and Essex County. You'll have to double check me, so don't hold me to it. I think as high as $7,500 towards closing costs. They're giving $5,000 or $7,500 towards closing costs. And I have not come across one buyer yet that, when I asked them, well, did you ask about the programs? They're like, what programs? So what do you mean? So just like they're giving programs to homeowners, there are programs out there for buyers. Make sure that your realtor is advising you. Your realtor should have had or should have or be comfortable having a conversation on your behalf and be an advocate with your mortgage person, but your mortgage person should also be working for you. It's not just a matter of intake and spitting out a pre-approval. They should make you aware of these options, because that $5,000 in closing costs may get you into that home that that you didn't think you could afford. So just be mindful of that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, guys, so we're well over time, but John, was there anything else you wanted to share with the group here before we wrap up?
Nothing right now, other than, every buyer is going through what you guys are going through. And as realtors / counselors, even psychiatrists for some of our clients, because it's rough. And even us as realtors, we need counselors,
Yes.
To deal with everything that's going on. Just know everyone is in the same boat, and it's all about communication. So, us as realtors, we're trying to communicate as much as possible to you guys, to not only keep you calm, but to keep you alert and in the swing of things as far as what's happening within this market. And we ask that you guys do the same thing. If you have questions, ask. The fact that you guys attended this webinar in itself shows that you're trying to leverage any possible advantage in this market to purchase a home. So we invite you, to continue to reach out and seek the knowledge and seek any little thing that can help you get, ahead of that next buyer in front of you.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much for that, John. Thank you guys for joining. If you want to get in touch, please find us. I'm at sunahventures.com, prinarealestate.com, or johnjohnson3.com. Our phone numbers are posted here. You can find me on social media at Prina Real Estate, or you can find John at JJ3 Real Estate. And again, we are part of the Exit Platinum Group. We work as teams. So, we're here for each other. If you ever want to just kind of bounce questions or ideas off of a couple of agents, we all work very closely together. It's not siloed at all. So if you have specific requirements, short sales, foreclosures, types of homes, I'll bring in that expert. John will bring in the expert, and we're here for you. So follow me on social media. I will be coming with the next webinar, part 3, in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. And feel free to continue the conversation on social, reach out to us.